Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 Stewardship Seminar. I'm Kristen Van Dam, an ecologist in stewardship, primarily responsible for supporting the Park District's Fuels Management Program. Today, I'll be giving you an update on the past 4 years of the Park District's Fuels Management Program and future directions for our work. This past October 20th was the 30th anniversary of the Oakland firestorm, also known as the Tunnel Fire. Many of our past and current staff participated in fighting this fire, including our Ward 2 board member, Dee Rosario. This remains the most destructive fire that the East Bay Hills has ever seen, with over 3,500 homes and 25 lives lost and over $1.5 billion in damage. At the time, the Tunnel Fire was the most destructive fire in California history. In the past 30 years, the fire landscape has changed dramatically. Several fires, including the 2017 Tubbs Fire and the 2018 Camp Fire, have eclipsed the Tunnel Fire in size and the amount of destruction. Wildfires are increasing in number, size, and severity, and affecting us in ways that were almost unimaginable 30 years ago. 7 of the 10 most destructive wildfires in California history have occurred in the past 4 years. Aggressive suppression has so far spared the urban Bay Area, but we are vulnerable in this new era. We were all affected by the SU Complex Fire of 2020, which burned nearly 400,000 acres, including over 5,000 acres of Park District lands. Air quality was unhealthy for weeks. Fire history is no longer a reliable predictor of fire location or size, and we continue to be challenged by the severity and scope of megafires. This CAL FIRE data shows how wildfires have increased in acreage so dramatically, particularly in the past 2 decades. California has seen more acreage burn nearly every year since 2002 than in any previous decade on record. Here's another way to look at the correlation between climate change and high severity fire. Watch as the plotted incidents change from cool to warm colors across the graph in accordance with their decade. The largest and most destructive fires correlate with increasing daily mean temperature, and the majority have occurred since the year 2000. Looking at all plotted fires, notice that also the largest wildfires are increasingly the same fires that are the most destructive in this graph. All of this data shows that we are now living in a novel fire landscape. The acceleration of climate change, which affects daily mean temperature, wind behavior, and water deficit, is putting increasing stress on our natural and human communities. The East Bay Regional Park District has been committed to protecting parks and people from catastrophic wildfire for over 50 years. The fire department was founded in the 1960s. Following the Tunnel Fire, the Park District and neighboring agencies formed the Hills Emergency Forum and formalized the Fire Danger Operating Plan. In coordination with these changes, the Park District prepared its Wildfire Hazard Reduction and Resource Management Plan, an associated CEQA process required to accept federal funding for fuels management. From the adoption of the plan, it took another 8 years for the district to receive clearance to begin fuels management work. Since 2018, the Park District has committed significant resources to fuels management projects that reduce the risk of catastrophic wildfire to parks and neighboring communities. The fire department prioritizes projects based on fortifying fuel breaks along park boundaries and critical evacuation routes, and maintaining fuels management areas for less than 8-foot flame lengths and elimination of ladder fuels. These projects increase the resiliency of the landscape to wildfire, also protecting our native ecosystems and the wildlife that rely on them. Why are fuel breaks effective? The definition of a fuel break is a strategically located strip on which a cover of dense, heavy, or flammable vegetation has been permanently changed to a cover of lower fuel volume and reduced flammability, as defined by Green, 1977. This is a shaded fuel break behind homes in Berkeley, where eucalyptus were removed and chipped and native live oaks retained. Fuel breaks have been found to be the most effective where they provide access for firefighting. This example of a fuel break in Claremont Canyon cleared the top of the ridge at a trail, which would allow firefighters to prevent a fire like the Tunnel Fire from spreading into urban areas. In 2020 to 2021, East Bay Regional Park District constructed the Grizzly Peak Ridgeline Fuel Break, a shaded fuel break running from Golf Course Drive to Lomas Cantadas, protecting 1.7 miles of this heavily used road and critical evacuation route. Constructed from 2019 to 2020 and now in the maintenance phase, the Kensington El Cerrito fuel break runs 2.5 miles, providing a shaded fuel break between park property and private residences. Experience of fire incidents of the past few years show that fuels management is working. At least 3 incidents have been stopped when the fire entered fuels treatment zones because these areas maintain conditions for fires to be stopped quickly and safely. In 2017, homes were saved along Ajax Place in Berkeley when fire staff stopped a late-night fire in an adjacent fuel break. In 2018, an arson fire along Grizzly Peak was stopped in an East Bay mud shaded fuel break. This past fire season, a fire of suspicious origin was stopped by fire staff in the Sibley Island Fuels Treatment Zone, which has been maintained as a shaded fuel break for over a decade. We continue to grow to meet the challenges of our shifting fire climate. The Park District now has 90% of its permanent fire staff dedicated to fuels management, including 3 fuels reduction coordinators, 2 fire captains, and 11 fuels crew members. Stewardship will have 2 dedicated positions in 2022 to support the fuels management program. Staff in all divisions support the interdisciplinary fuels management team, which meets monthly in addition to focused coordination meetings. Since 2018, 57 fuels management projects encompassing 265 acres have been conducted. Between initial treatment and maintenance, nearly 550 acres have been treated, with over $5 million put into the program. The majority of treated area in the project area consists of non-native vegetation cover, with nearly 50% consisting of eucalyptus and Monterey pine cover types, both non-native cover types. The typical treatment in these cover types is removal of all dead standing trees and thinning of remaining live trees, typically retaining the largest. Large trees are both more resistant to fire and more prominent in the landscape, so retaining them has several benefits, including less visual impact. Thinning these stands does not convert the cover type, so very little measurable change in vegetation cover is detectable. Here's a eucalyptus stand, formerly a dense plantation, following thinning treatment. Smaller stems have been removed, while large and healthy trees are retained. Untreated eucalyptus plantations can have a density of 600 trees per acre or more, while treated stands should have fewer than 150 trees per acre. This stand of coast live oaks was released from under the eucalyptus following treatment and can now grow without competition. These oaks are probably 10 to 15 years old, but should live for 500 years or more. The fuels team coordinates closely to ensure that ecological goals and permit conditions are adhered to during work. In addition to mandated permit conditions, fuels prescriptions are written to retain native trees and shrubs, protect bird nests and wood rat middens, and mitigate any project-related erosion or weed invasion. Thoughtful and well-planned fuels management benefits ecosystems. 3 special status species are protected by our fuels permits. These are referred to as covered species and were included in the permits based on the assumption that they would be present in fuels management areas. Several more species and taxa are considered federal or state special status species, but do not have official threatened or endangered designation. These have their own protocols. Nesting birds are protected by the Federal Migratory Bird Act, and San Francisco dusky-footed wood rat has its own avoidance and management protocol. Alameda whipsnake is our principal species of concern during fuels work. No take of Alameda whipsnake has occurred, even when fuels work is conducted in occupied habitat. A 5-year whipsnake study was conducted pursuant to the conditions of the biological opinion. That study was completed this year, and results indicate that AWS populations remain stable throughout the study period and do not appear to be affected by fuels reduction activities. This photo, taken by Fire Captain McIntyre and vouchered by a designated biologist, shows an Alameda whipsnake predating a western fence lizard on a recently cleared area near where work was still occurring. Fuels treatments in Pallid manzanita occupied areas was successful, with overhanging vegetation removed, which will hopefully encourage regeneration. Pile burning will also be conducted at the appropriate time in the Maritime chaparral to activate the seed bank. Unfortunately, pallids remain at risk from trail users. Park staff reported that a pallid was cut along the main trail in Huckleberry, apparently by a handsaw, to open up the trail. New signage is in progress to educate trail users about the Pallid manzanita and its endangered status. There are very few areas within the project area with observations of red-legged frog. No CRLF have been seen during site assessments or during work. In preparation for fuels reduction in RTA TIO2A near Jewel Lake, EBRPD performed a U.S. Fish and Wildlife protocol level survey for red-legged frog. That survey found no red-legged frogs, although bullfrogs were abundant. If there are any red-legged frogs attempting to reproduce in the Wildcat Creek watershed, it is likely that predation pressure from bullfrogs is preventing them from doing so. San Francisco dusky-footed wood rats are much more abundant in the East Bay Hills than originally thought. Middens are present in approximately 85% of work sites and are so abundant that many have been relocated to allow work to conform to prescriptions. Relocation is performed in accordance with EBRPD's state-approved protocol. 2020 and 2021 brought new challenges to the Park District. Climate change threats continue to mount as drought and weather patterns put strain on natural and district resources. Ecosystems will continue to respond to stressors in ways we do not yet understand. The sudden tree dieback has shifted the fuel program's focus and added new and urgent project work. The threat of wildfire affects fuels work as well, with an increasing number of red flag days slowing project progress. The widespread tree dieback in 2020 affects over 1,000 acres of trees, primarily eucalyptus and pine, and primarily caused by drought. Monterey pines, which were planted more or less in the same time period, appear to be reaching the end of their lifespans en masse. Luckily, most native trees appear to be relatively resistant to the dieback. In eucalyptus, foliage dieback and epicormic sprouting appear to be the main symptoms, which are not necessarily an indicator of tree mortality. However, the amount of standing dead wood in these trees elevates wildfire threat in heavily affected areas. In the main affected areas, in Tilden and Anthony Chabot Regional Parks, staff are conducting mapping to identify the extent of dieback. The Park District is expanding fuels reduction operations to address the problem and has received funds to support this work. The Park District will begin thinning the dieback areas in 2022. Despite these significant challenges, staff continue to develop new tools to advance our work. The introduction of the California Vegetation Treatment Program, EIR, will expand permitting capacity to conduct fuels management in our parklands. Staff are also working to assess feasibility for biomass utilization and expand capacity for prescribed burning. Stewardship staff are working with partner agencies to complete a fine-scale vegetation and fire risk mapping project, which will, for the first time, provide detailed vegetation data for the entire Park District, as well as both Alameda and Contra Costa counties. In 2022, our staff will be increasing our restoration program in cooperation with fuels management work to restore extirpated plant communities and increase environmental benefits. In 2021, we formalized a partnership with the California Native Plant Society to restore oak woodlands to several acres within the fuels management area, with a plan to break ground in 2022. We are also assessing ways to restore stream tributaries currently occupied by eucalyptus plantation back to native riparian woodland. We're looking to the most current science to advance and inform our fuels management work into the next decade and beyond. Responsible land management includes fuels management and embraces objectives for natural and cultural preservation, ecological and human safety, and the concept that managed land is healthy land. I was personally inspired by this quote from a study by Ellis et al., just published this year. This research supports the growing body of evidence that responsible land management is linked to biodiversity. It is in this spirit that our staff work to steward our lands and build the next generation of our fuels management program. Thank you all so much, and thank you for attending the Stewardship Seminar.